Good morning from Thornton. So today is a getting out day for me, which I'm excited about. I am off to a Brontë Day Retreat just down the road. So I've had a night in an Airbnb here. I'm dressed and ready to go. I'm going to go down and meet everybody outside a cafe called Plenty. And I'm going to get myself a coffee and I'm going to see what today is all about. So I'm going to try and take you guys with me. It's going to be my first time filming with lots of other people around that I'm going to be part of. So let's see how it goes. Exciting! But look at that beautiful background. Sun is out, sky is blue. Perfect. Back in the cold and dreary months of January, I spotted an advert for a Brontë Day Retreat in Thornton with Emma Conally-Barklem and Sharon Wright, both writers I admire with a deep knowledge of the Brontë sisters. I booked my place and dreamt of a warm, sunny day in the future. Well, the weather delivered and it turned out to be the most beautiful day. Clear skies, rich conversation about all things Brontë and a proper dose of history. I honestly don't think it could have been any more perfect. Emma Conally-Barklem is a local Thornton girl. She's a gifted poet and author as well as a yoga teacher and a grief worker. Her two poetry collections are The Ridings and Hymns from the Sisters, the latter inspired by the Brontës, their lives and their legacy. I was lucky enough to read a proof copy of Hymns from the Sisters and fell in love with it straight away. Sharon Wright is an author and journalist who's written for national magazines and newspapers. Her book, The Mother of the Brontës, is brilliantly researched. It reads like a novel, but it's packed with facts. Sharon's latest book, co-written with Brontë Parsonage curator Anne Dinsdale, is called Let Me In, The Brontës and Brick and Mortar. It's due out in July and I absolutely can't wait to get my hands on it. Thornton is in West Yorkshire, about 4 miles from Bradford and just 7 miles from Haworth. This is where the Brontë family first settled before moving to Haworth in 1820, and this is where I spent my day. We began at South Square, a collection of 19th century workers' cottages that had been transformed into a lovely community space. There's a gallery, artist studio and a gorgeous cafe with seating in the sheltered courtyard. Sharon opened the day with a talk about Thornton and the Brontës and how Patrick and Maria Brontë came to live here. Armed with a takeaway coffee, I was ready for our walk through Thornton to the Brontë Birthplace house, which has only recently reopened to the public after restoration work. Patrick Brontë moved to Thornton in May 1815 with his wife Maria and their two young daughters, Maria and Elizabeth. They lived in the parsonage on Market Street, now known as the Brontë Birthplace. It's a grey 2-star listed building, including its railings and its garden. Over the years, the building was altered and extended, and at one point a shop front was added that housed a butcher's shop. The plan is to convert the 3 upstairs bedrooms into guest accommodation in the future. I can't wait to visit then. On our visit, we were able to peek inside the downstairs rooms before Emma recreated a lovely memory from her childhood, knocking on the door just as her mum had done once to ask the then private owners for a look inside. Sharon had arranged for us to visit the gardens of Kipping House, once home to family friends of the Brontes, Elizabeth and her father, John Firth. Elizabeth kept a diary, so we know the Brontë children spent many hours playing in the garden here, while their mother, Maria, sat with Elizabeth over a pot of tea. The house is beautiful and the gardens are breathtaking, and it's easy to picture the joy it must have brought the children, especially compared to the cramped conditions of their home. And of course, no house is complete without a pet. Sharon kindly read a passage from her book, but my recording skills went out the window and I cut off the very start of her talk, where she says, Kipping House was built in the
17th century and was a fine residence fit for the gentry. It had a library and a large sunny drawing room looking out over a huge sloping garden to the Pinchbeck Valley. It was just minutes from the parsonage down Old Kipping Lane below Market Street, so that's where we've just walked. Yeah. Maria loved to visit the lovely big house, away from the clutter of babies and Pat's papers. I mean, we were talking, weren't we, about how crammed that little house was, and it wasn't in very good repair. We know that from Patrick's letters. The Brontes had only been in Thornton a month when at long last the Napoleonic Wars came to an end. On the 18th of June, Arthur Wellesley, Duke of Wellington, claimed a decisive victory at the Battle of Waterloo. After 23 years, Napoleon was finally defeated. Maria's country had been at war since she was about 10 years old. On 20th of June, the Brontes were invited to a celebratory dinner at Kipping. So again, context, if you think, you know, the French Wars have been raging for the whole of Maria's life, really. She was born in 1783. And the Wars of Independence over in America, she lived in Penzance, where, you know, very connected to the sea, not particularly connected to the land, but, you know, there would have been soldiers, there would have been merchants, there would have been French emigres, all through that. So here they were celebrating the end of the war.
Yes, that is the viaduct you can see from the garden. We then walked down Thornton Road to the site of Patrick's Chapel, now known as the Old Bow Chapel. The original graveyard still remains and part of the chapel structure is visible, though a new church was later built across the road. The old site is now a peaceful spot where you can sit and imagine the christening of the Brontë children, which would have taken place here.
Mr. Brontë came to, whatever, I'm not a person of faith, but whatever your opinions of faith are, it was a church that gave us the Brontes. It was a church that brought together Ryan Patrick, brought them to Thornton, then took them to Haworth. So this was the Old Bell Chapel where Mr. Brontë arrived and took it over. Like I said earlier, they weren't the biggest noise really. The nonconformists very much had a hold on this part of West Yorkshire. But what I think is important is he came here, he made the best of it. When he arrived, there was a smell from all the bad burials under the church floor. I mean, it was in a right state. It was called the Old Bell Chapel. God, I'm even pointing at the right here. Yes, I am. The Old Bell Chapel because it had a cupola, and that's where the bell was. It was the Chapel of Ease of St James. It was known as the Old Bell Chapel locally. It dates from about 1560s, I think. when it was a chapel of ease called St Leonard's. So it's evolved over the years, but by the time 1815 came, along comes Patrick Brontë. It's in a right dilapidated state, but they would have all come down here, would have worshipped here. He ran his, it's not his parish so much because it was Bradford parish, but his jurisdiction really, which was pretty huge actually. It covered a lot of area around here, and he would have walked everywhere. Never had enough money for a horse, Mr Brontë. Obviously that's quite sad. That's why he walked everywhere. So yeah, until very recently though, people always thought that was Mr Bronte's church, because local history and word of mouth, as we know, not everyone's like us, not everyone cares, do they really? Oh, that's the Brontë church. No, it wasn't. That was built in, I think, 1876. And this just fell into disuse. It was just a bit of old scrubby land really. So what were you like when you were growing up?
So I was just saying to somebody, when I was growing up, this was all derelict.
Yeah.
It's very overgrown. Certainly didn't have this, I think it had tarmac, and then it just gave out. So you were in scrubland basically. And we used to pick our way through to this. There wasn't a cliff here. And it was derelict.
And it wouldn't be a proper day out for me without meeting a cat. This one had the right colouring, so in my head I called him Branwell. Lunchtime was a real treat at the Café Plenty. The food was delicious, and even though it was a very warm day, I couldn't resist finishing up with a proper brew. After lunch, we moved upstairs to the community space above the cafe, where Emma introduced the writing task she set for the afternoon. She helped ease us in by reading some of her poetry. Just wanted to quickly say before we move on that Sharon isn't scrolling through Facebook or shopping for shoes. She's actually looking for a quote from her new book. Right, let's carry on. Over to you, Emma.
This peat was used to heat homes, burnt turf, steaming of long dead creatures, heather, root and lawn. I feel a longing for these walks, sharp, crisp air and soft water. Your skin luminescent, tinged red with cold. Our laughter choked back by vicious blast, which must have frozen the sisters' feet fast to the earth, tender as unfledged birds. Our memories fluting upwards in a baleful Yorkshire sky, scalding tea a remedy for all ills, our hearth tilled by rain and bluster. We shelter in near Top Withens, eyes filled to brim with strange primal beauty emitted to only those who see their souls reflected indifferently in Curlew's call and waterfall. An imperfect homecoming now as I walk alone, bereft, windswept towards the moors, which shape shift under cumulus clouds, tumulus hills mapped ordinance space to grieve, and hold a hardy wildflower close. Tiny bells of hope chime nature's song, though you are gone. So this poem's called The Lady Saved from the Waves. I heard he burnt them, romantic trifles, saline flowered from a stormy Atlantic crossing, watermarked bullion treasure of how to write, fairer sex notwithstanding. A mother's maiden voyage, buoyant, fragrant as cornflowers, till corrugated and hollowed, all she could call for was a Cornish setting of the fire, a pyre of her broken hopes. Took boat from Thornton, memento mori up in smoke. He broke the ocean pack to pax on his fury that swallowed up, in puerile worry, her drowned sketches of how to be a lady.
We were also lucky enough to hear a reading from Sharon's new book, which, for some reason, I didn't record. A good excuse to buy the book when it comes out. I haven't gone into too much detail about the writing activity itself because I hope some of you might decide to go on the retreat yourself, and I wouldn't want to spoil it. Stopping to really be present, listening to Emma and Sharon, helped me switch off and write. I had no idea what I was going to say, but once I put pen on paper, the words just came. Thoughts and ideas that had been waiting to be written down all spilled out. We ended the day with a short meditation led by Emma. I floated down those stairs feeling utterly content, so much so that instead of going straight home, I found a bench and I had a little daydream. This video isn't sponsored or anything like that. I paid for the retreat like everyone else and wasn't asked to make this video either. Everything I shared here is my honest opinion. I truly had a wonderful day, surrounded by like-minded people in beautiful surroundings with two brilliant and insightful hosts. So thank you very much, Emma and Sharon. If you'd like to know more about Emma's other retreats, there is a link to her page in the description. I've also included all the books and the locations I've mentioned. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please do the whole likey subscribey thing. It really helps me out and it lets YouTube know that we want to watch more Brontë content. I will see you the Friday after next for more Brontë adventures. Have a good weekend and take care. Bye!